Okay, hi everybody. David Fogel back with you, CEO of the Symphonina Foundation. Back with another Symphonina Foundation podcast. We've been having quite a week. We had Grammy-nominated violinist Anna Williams. We had Grammy-nominated harpist and composer Kirsten Agresta Copley. We had Lou McMahon, new voting member of the Recording Academy yesterday. And today we have classical vocalist Allison Charney on vacation in Europe. And still here she is with us today. Allison, it's our pleasure. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, David. How are you?
Well, really good. And we're sitting here in anticipation of your new album, Alike, My Mother's Dream, which is due out on Friday, I believe. Is that right?
It is. 8/8.
8/8. Now, I had the pleasure of listening to a preview, and it was just an incredible album. And I am genuinely excited to have it be released and let everybody else hear it. Can you tell us a little bit about the genesis of the album, how you got it started, both from a creative point of view and also from a production? Like, how do you actually get it going to make an album like that?
So the title sort of says it all, Alike My Mother's Dream. I suppose it doesn't say it all, but it gives me a good starting point. My mother has lived her whole life teaching us all that we should strive to find what makes us all alike rather than focus on what separates us, what divides us. And I felt that right now in the state of the world, that was an awfully good lesson to try to embody. And what I know how to do is sing and make music. And so I thought that's what I should do and how I should respond. And this is, when I say the state of the world, I don't mean for this to be any sort of a political statement at all. In fact, I sort of think of it as like above politics, supra politics. I don't know what the right prefix would be.
Metapolitical.
Yeah. But it's meant to be instead really a statement about humanity or a plea for humanity, that we should try really hard to listen to each other better and try to find common ground. And that's the basic premise of the album. The way I do that is over 7 songs. It's all classical music. 4 of the pieces were written in our times and 3 in the Romantic era of classical music. They're sort of rediscovered and reconceived pieces. And they're separated into 2 groups. One are the country pairs. There's a piece composed by a Russian composer, one by a Ukrainian, one by an Iranian, and one by an Israeli. And my point there is that all of that music belongs right together on an album. And maybe we all belong together on planet Earth. And then the others are these 3 big, I call them the orchestral anchors of the piece. The first one is Dvorak, Songs My Mother Taught Me, which does speak for itself, I think, once you know the theme. The final piece, it's actually the second to final on the album, but is by Kim Sherman. It's a brand new arrangement of her piece Invocation that I know you have heard before, David. And she walked around her very diverse neighborhood of Washington Heights, and she asked everybody she met how they would say in their language the sentence, "Make peace on all your lands." And she settled on 15 different languages, and she recorded everybody speaking it so that she could set the text in such a way that it was really idiomatically correct in the languages. And that's the only text of that piece. And then the middle piece is a really newly discovered piece of Amy Beach, the brilliant and fabulous American composer who lived in Boston at the turn of the last century. And this is a piece of hers that was lost for over 100 years. She hand-delivered the one and only obviously handwritten manuscript that she had written. She brought it to France because she knew a soprano there whom she wanted to sing it. She wanted to pitch it to her. She brought it to France. The soprano loved it. They agreed they would do it. She left the score with the soprano so she could learn it. World War I broke out. The soprano put the music for safekeeping in a trunk that was then seized by the German army and was just lost for 100 years. And it's only recently been uncovered. And I had it transcribed from the actual manuscript and sort of reconceived just a little bit. I have to admit, somebody scooped us, and there's one other recording that came out, but in French. This is the first ever English language recording. And Amy Beach wrote the English words herself. It's a biblical story that she expanded upon.
Yeah. How do you?
So that was a very long answer.
No, it's a great. Let's pick up with that last one. How do you get to find out that these hidden gems are no longer hidden?
The Amy Beach story, it is so, it makes me sound so intellectual. So I should just say it and leave it at that and make people think I'm super intellectual. I was looking through graduate students' dissertations.
Well,
I really cannot explain to you how it was that I was just one night going down the rabbit hole of the internet, and one thing led to another I've been an Amy Beach fan for a very, very, very long time. In fact, my very first recording made in the early 90s features some Amy Beach. I love her and everything about her, including she started her career as a pianist. And when she married Mr. Beach, it was considered inappropriate for married women to do something as déclassé as play piano in front of people.
hmm,
And so she was not permitted to continue her career as a pianist.
hmm,
But her husband and she both realized that she couldn't stop making music, which of course is what happens to all of us who have to be musicians.
yep.
And so they came up with this idea that she could be a composer and sort of make music on the sly and not be out in the public so much. And hers was the very first symphony composed by a woman, performed by the Boston Symphony Orchestra. So
Oh,
she's long been a hero of mine,
yeah.
and I love her music. But so I just came upon this story of this graduate student who found this story and discovered it and studied it and researched it and came up with all of this information. And then I knew I had to find the piece and I had to sing it. And then the pandemic hit, and that squashed every hope of doing anything live. And when I came up with the idea of this album, it occurred to me that the reason to do this Amy Beach piece finally is because it is, of course, a collateral damage of war, of not getting along with one another, of looking for what makes us different rather than what makes us the same, that we lose great art and great music and great poetry. And what a huge mistake that is for the advancement of society. And so my hope in resurrecting this piece is to have it there as a central part of my album and a point in saying, look at all the things we lose when we can't focus on what's important, which is to find common ground.
Yeah. You have one from a Ukrainian composer, Barvinsky, I believe it was, who was held prisoner by Russia beginning in the late 1940s. And I'm curious about your choice of all the different tracks that you have. How did you make the choices that you have? And in that one particularly, I think you also worked on an arrangement for an orchestral arrangement, right? As opposed to maybe more of a chamber setting. So what are your thought processes about how do you go about picking the songs that are on the album and then figuring out what the arrangement is that you want?
I mean, I suppose the self-involved answer is I have to be able to sound good
Yeah.
and do it justice, right? Like it has to fit the instrumentation that we're using, and my voice is the first concern. But then after that, where do you go from there? And with this Barvinsky one in particular, we actually went through quite a few pieces. This was not the original Barvinsky that we thought we were going to use. In fact, it wasn't even the first Ukrainian one. And we landed on this. It took several tries. We were really lucky to land upon this piece and then realize, with the help of fabulous composers like Chris Prather, that we could arrange it differently. And luckily, the Ukrainian classical music community is so, so eager for their music to be heard. They make it incredibly easy to take anything you got and do anything you want with it. There are no restrictions. They make it so easy. They just want you to do their music. So they give it to you. They say, please do anything you want, change anything you want. And so what we thought was going to be a pretty simple chamber music slot in the album turned into this grand orchestral work, to which we added solo harp and solo violin and celeste. And we kept the soaring, very romantic soprano part and have this fabulous National Symphony Orchestra conducted by Benjamin Loeb, who is my very oldest and dearest musical collaborator. We've been making music together for 37 years. It's a lot of years.
That's a lot of years. That's good. No, I mean, then you know what works. So that's great. On the Iranian folk song, I had noted that you have it arranged for soprano, of course, but also alto flute, which is maybe an interesting choice, and cello and piano. So did Chris do the arrangement there as well, or was someone else working on the arrangement?
Keon himself wrote every single note of this piece.
Uh-huh.
He is a fabulous, fabulous, super duper accomplished young composer. And he wrote this piece originally for mezzo soprano, which I am not,
Hmm.
and piano. And then when I asked him if I could do it, he then had to rewrite it for soprano. And, which could be as simple as just lifting the key a little bit, but it can also, you can scooch things around just a little bit to make best use of the different tessituras of the vocal requirement there. But then he also added, at my request, cello and flute. And then at his suggestion, he decided the flute should be alto flute, which lends a really cool sound, I think, to the piece.
The Iranian folk song is dedicated to a memory of Amini. And can you tell me about Gina Masa Amini and what that dedication is all
Well,
about?
I mean, I can a little bit, and I don't mean to be coy about it, but the purpose of including it on this album is not a political one, and that is a very political topic.
Ah,
And
okay.
so I'm sort of shying away just a little bit from, as a performer, I'm now really going away from your question and answering it in a very different kind of way. But as a performer, I have always found that as long as you're thinking something, as long as it means something to you
Hmm.
while you're performing it, of course, it doesn't matter if that's what it means to the listener, right? They're going to have their own emotional reaction to whatever it is that you're doing. But as long as you're authentically feeling something, that's what matters. And so the fact that the composer had a very specific thought in mind when he composed it, of course, doesn't mean that when I sing it, I have to have the same thought in mind, nor when you hear it, do you then also have to have the same thought. But indeed, this is an anthem of the freedom movement in Iran. And this is one of the women who recently lost her life in Iran fighting for her freedom. Again, this album is not commenting on anything good or bad happening in the world. It is really saying, let's listen to each other. Let's have a piece by somebody who's the son of immigrants from Iran, right next to the piece of somebody who's the daughter of Holocaust survivors.
Yeah.
And that's the purpose of including it. It's also a gorgeous, really cool piece that goes out of the Western musical language that you and I know so well, that 12-tone scale that we've spent forever perfecting. This one
Mm.
has more notes than 12. It uses microtones, so you have to sing in between the pitches. So there's a C and then a C sharp, and then apparently there's a note in between C and C sharp, which took me a good part of forever to figure out how
As a
to get.
saxophone player, I would try to avoid that, but you know, that's
It's
yeah.
unbelievably hard when you have been brought up on those 12 notes to understand that there may be others, which is also a really interesting lesson about life, right?
Yeah, there's no reason that it should necessarily be a 12 tone scale. That's fine.
Or that it should be just exactly what you've always thought, that you can open your mind and something new can come in, even at my advanced stage in life, David.
Allison, where did you record all the music?
Well, we recorded it in a lot of places. We recorded in New York City, where I am from. We recorded in Prague, Czech, which was very exciting, especially for the Dvorak, since he is from Prague. So it was really extra special to record his music in his hometown. We also recorded quite a bit in Oklahoma City, where my incredible team of lead producers and engineers, Kit Wakely, Christina Giacona, and Patrick Conlon, all of whom have been guests on your podcast recently. You like my alike team. I'm going to take it all very
I
personally.
do.
um, Even though they themselves all have multiple other projects going on that they are equally proud of, I'm quite sure. Anyway, they are based in Oklahoma City, and so I often travel to them. We also recorded some of it in Dallas, which is the hometown of Benjamin Loeb, who is the pianist and conductor on the project.
Are you going to be touring with any performances off the album that we can look forward to?
Well, I'm doing little bits of it. It's hard. I've made an album that's hard to do live because it requires a very specific and quite large orchestra to get through the whole thing. So some of the smaller pieces are easier to do, and some of the pieces lend themselves to being recreated just by piano and soprano. And so those I'm able to just take on the road with almost myself. And I do have a few concerts coming up, one in Los Angeles in a few weeks, and another one in New York City, maybe one in Austin. And those will not be full album performances because, again, I don't have the luxury of the orchestra at this point, but it would be great, especially the Beach and the Barvinsky. I think are real. I think they're important pieces for the classical music world to know. And they have, up until now, been sort of impossible to know. So I feel that there's some greater service in getting those performed. But boy, oh boy, I didn't pick pieces that are just easy to, slap together.
Let's go back in time for a little bit here. So you're growing up, you start to sing. A lot of us start to sing when we're young. Most of us with common sense give it up because we're not that good at it. But some of us are very good at it. And eventually, when you're very good at it, you continue singing like pop tunes or whatever, but it takes a certain attitude and recognition of a desire to go into classical vocals. So what was your path to becoming a classical vocalist?
Well, I mean, a lot of it has to do with really smart teaching that I was lucky to receive. My first voice teacher, Jane Campbell, really understood what to do with my unusual voice. And I think that is also part of it. I think it's an unusual instrument that lends itself to this type of singing, which is purely unamplified. And, I just sang a Verdi Requiem in Dallas with the Dallas Symphony, conducted by Benjamin Loeb. And, the choir is 200 people, the orchestra is 100 people, and your voice gets heard above it all with your natural instrument. It takes a specific, certainly an enormous amount of technique and study and practice to be able to do that. But also, I do think there's something to what you've been given naturally. And I think my voice sort of spoke for itself in that it was not going to be anything but this. And so because I then decided to nurture it and train it, that's where it went. But I don't think it could have been any other kind of voice.
When did you start performing?
I mean, I don't know, early. You can't really study voice, but the female voice, classical voice, doesn't fully reach maturity until 35-ish, 30, right around there. So this is not a young person's game. This is not a violinist or pianist who, if you haven't started by the time you're 9, you're over the hill and there's no hope. Um, so, but I always
if you're
sang
10 and you
I
haven't started, don't take that personally. Just get busy. Okay.
Yeah. Obviously, I say that in jest. If there are any young people listening, I hope
Yeah.
you start whenever you want to start. But yeah, I mean, I always sang. I was always in choir. I always sort of I had either the highest voice or the loudest voice, or, and then in junior high school and high school, I started doing the musicals and getting the leads in musicals. And it just sort of fell into place. My aunt was an opera singer. So it wasn't completely weird and out of left field to think that that was an option for what somebody might do. And my grandmother sang as an extra chorister in the Metropolitan Opera Chorus.
Well, you had a lot of great
very,
examples then to follow. That's
So I didn't invent it.
What's the landscape now for someone who's looking to enter classical vocal?
Boy, oh boy, David, it's really hard. Post-pandemic, the operatic world has not come back. I mean, I think that being an opera singer right now, which is how I started my career, and now I would say I'm much more of a recording artist than an opera singer. But being an opera singer is tough going. Opera companies are folding all over the United States. Post-pandemic, it just has not come back as an art form that sustains itself financially. So it's brutal. So I think, as in many things, you have to become a hyphenate, and you have to come up with creative ways to do what it is that you have to do. And if you have to sing, if you have to have this music come out of your own body, which is such a unique and bizarro and self-involved way to live your life, then you have to create opportunity for yourself. And I know that sounds really hard, and it is really hard, but I don't know what else to advise young people. I think you have to be really creative right now and how you want to go about making this kind of life for yourself.
So like with everything, you have to be good at what you're doing. Then you also have to be good at promotion and business and everything else that goes along with it. And definitely don't be an introvert, because that's not how it's going to work.
Well, David, I actually think that I am an introvert. I think that I have been, and I think a lot of performers are natural introverts. If I had my druthers, I'd rather be,
Interesting.
in a small group. That being said, I'm super comfortable performing on an enormous stage in front of thousands of people. I think that those are, I think somehow those are different. I think introverts can rise to that challenge. But you have to have an awful lot of confidence, I think, and you have to not be shy about promoting yourself. And, that piece of it always feels so yucky to me. It's just endless, endless talking about yourself. On the one hand, on the other hand, if you take the lessons that I'm hoping to impart with this album, for example, and you do a lot of listening when you're promoting yourself so that you're not just endlessly talking about yourself, but you're really interacting with people, often who are great musicians who have a lot to tell you about what they're doing too and what they're up to too and the projects that they're working on. It's amazing what can come from that and amazing the collaborations that can arise. I mean, even our interview right now, you and I met each other talking about ourselves really and our own projects, and we found each other by truly listening to each other's music and truly becoming fans of one another. And maybe now we're just having a chat, and maybe at some point we'll make some music together and do
That
a
would be
Symphonina.
that would be great. That would be great. Allison, if other people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
I'm super easy to find on social media. I use 3 names on social media, Allison Charney Epstein, and my email address is allison@preformances.org, because I, before the pandemic, ran a concert series for 11 years called Preformances, which was an opportunity for people, professional classical musicians at the very highest level, to come try something out before they did it somewhere else.
Yeah.
So allison@preformances.org. So it's like performances, but PRE formances.
And it's a .org, right?
It is a .org.
All right, Allison. We're going to listen to some more of your great vocal work on the way out here. We wish you a great release in 2 days and a good rest of your vacation, too. I'm sure you'll have a very busy schedule when you get back. And if there's anything that we can do at the Symphonina Foundation to help you, you just let us know.
David, I'm an enormous fan of you personally and of everything that you do to elevate music and musicians. And it's been a complete pleasure to speak to you today.